Okay, hello. Here we are again. Chapter 8, Print and Broadcast Advertising, Social and Mobile Media. So we're going to talk about uh, all of that, the medium for the message. Um, it's really talk about the impact of technology on marketing, and its biggest impact really has been the availability to target consumers more precisely and effectively. So we're going to talk about that today with this chapter. Just getting organized with my notes. Okay, let's get going. Okay, so there's impression versus segment based targeting. So, um, impression based targeting is this idea that there is this idea of two-way communication. There's real time bidding. With certain products, certain technology products out there or messages. You can customize the message. It's immediate feedback. You can constantly charge and re retarget and refocus on the product. Segment based, generally speaking, is one way communication. It's of traditional type of marketing communication. That there's the pre-negotiated prices that are set, um, and it's just based on larger demographic and psychographic profiles. So we're going to talk about Google. So um, how is it that Google gets their advertising revenue? So they have web search ads, which are ads that are generally generated by consumer searches. So you look for one thing, look for purses online, and then all of a sudden you get more ads for purses. There's online display ads. They're fixed banners that don't vary according to the user's profiles or search patterns. They're posted on websites. They're on everyone's website or everyone's Google page. And then mobile advertising. Those are ads that appear on mobile devices and Google search results, and content websites, also in apps that you might use. So there's also YouTube ads that you see when you're watching. Maybe you see an ad when you're watching these videos on Google. And then non-Google sites, Yahoo, something like that, or a shopping site. So that's this idea of how Google's most used function is a search engine. So the way they make their money is through sponsored ads, and that's just really the new way of marketing and how you can capture people. Okay, social media. I know that everyone knows social media. You're all familiar with social media. You have grown up in a social media world, but we're just going to define it here. It's a means of interaction among people in which they create, share, and exchange information and ideas in virtual communities and networks. So the structure of social media, there's profiles. You have friends, individual friends. You have groups, discussion boards. You can opt in or you can opt out to allow them to control information they share with friends and information they receive from others. Okay, so let's look at some other terms, general terms here. Apps, short for applications. It's chunks of software that's installed on someone's computer, tablet, or smartphone. They're gateways to games, online resources, social networking. Also could, things that might, help you in getting places, that kind of thing. So let's talk next about what kind of information that's being requested. Basic permissions in terms of include a name, identification, gender, personal demographics, list of friends. User permissions are requests to allow the installation of the applications on the user's computers. Friends permissions includes requests to share information to the users have about friends using the same app. And then sensitive information requests include questions about users' highly personal aspects such as political or religious affiliation or even sexual orientation. So those are the things that when we talk about when you go on social media, what is it that that people are looking for? What are some of those? What kind of information does the person who runs the social media site look for? All right, so some best practices in terms of social advertising. You want to make sure you listen to interactions. So you hear what's going on. You use information to generate some sort of buzz. That there's this idea of having corporate people on Twitter. You have to train and empower employees to make sure that they know how to use the information correctly and gather it correctly. And also, and be able to respond to people. This idea of combining social media and iPhone apps or Android apps as well, and being able to integrate with social media, allowing consumers to interact with brand designs, and actually getting an immediate information back from them. Okay, so let's talk about some effective social media. Generally speaking, it's planned with traditional media advertising. So they have this whole idea of integrated marketing communications. Social media is a big part of it. Marketers need to consider the fact that social media simultaneously reaches several audiences, consumers, retailers, other parties that they might do business with, which could justify a larger advertising budget. You want to make sure that you can track likes or mine data for new niches or partner products. This idea of making sure that algorithms are up to date and effective. It also can strengthen connections between brands and customers, which is very important, and making sure that you have some sort of guidelines for communication that are set and monitored for compliance. So you want to make sure that that's important. There is some when we talked about Twitter. We talked about having the top brass on Twitter. The general consensus, though, and when they interview or they survey top CEOs, that they don't really trust Twitter and they don't like using Twitter. Okay, so social media communication channels. We're talking about owned social media and paid social media. So owned social media are messages that are sent by marketers and delivered to consumers that the marketers control. So their websites or maybe an app that they run. So it's owned social media. That is in contrast to paid social media, which are messages that are sent via channels that are not owned by the marketers, who pay for using the channels. So, blogs and that kind of thing, or other reviews, that kind of stuff. Okay, and then earned social media are channels where consumers pass along messages about brands to one another. Again, that could be it could also be in a blog. It could be let's look at those. Blogs or microblogs, social networks, widgets, games, apps, mobile phones, that kind of thing. So this is, you could consider a microblogging platform to be Twitter. All right, and then consumer responses to social media, and there is great value from mobile devices. A mobile device, mobile advertising is done by sending promotional messages to consumers' cell phones, iPads, electronic readers, and other devices that they carry when they're on the go. So monetary value is this idea that the device provides good value for the money and also exceeds the value consumers receive from using non-mobile communication devices. So you want to make sure that that they're happy with their mobile device. Convenience value is it saves time and money, so it improves the efficiency and makes people's life easier. When we talk about emotional value, that people feel good and relaxed when they're using the device. That's very important, that there's some level of comfort. And then social value, and we're going to talk more about that as we go on, that people want to feel accepted by others and impress them by using their mobile devices. It's still considered at some level some level of a status symbol. Okay, so consumers have different responses to social media, and there's cultural differences. For the Japanese, mobile ads generate effective word of mouth. European consumers showed that cross-cultural differences affect the effectiveness of mobile advertising. So it depends. So for some places it works, some places it doesn't. This is what, mostly we focus in this class on the U.S. market, but it's important to understand that, we live in this we live in a global society, and we certainly live in a global marketplace, and it's important to understand, what culturally how things impact, what sort of cultural changes in culture might impact people's responsiveness to it. So, and again, the language and the source makes a big difference and adds to the credibility. Okay, so search advertising. What is search advertising? It's a method of placing online ads on websites that show results from the search engine queries, which is one way that uh, Google makes their money and Yahoo makes their money and all that kind of thing. And frankly, Facebook makes their money as well, is being able to see what it is that other people, what consumers are searching for and looking for, and then adding ads that respond to that. Okay, so again, how do we measure the media's effectiveness? So you define the objectives and what you want to do. We talk, creating awareness, increasing sales, that kind of stuff. You have to want to figure out what's the most appropriate platform to achieve the objectives. Produce the content, figure out what the pricing is, if you can, what you can afford to do, and then you measure the effectiveness from there. Okay, so this whole idea of analyzing website visits. There are a variety of different methods. Unique visitors, it's the idea of the number of visitors to the website that have accessed its content. You can use user profiles. User profiles are also sometimes monitored. Cost per unique visitor, so you want to figure out the total cost of placing the application or ad divided by the number of unique visitors that you get. So if I go to a website 5 times, only 1 time I consider a unique visitor. Return visits, the average number of times a user returns to the site within a specific period. So a unique visitor can have a return visit. Time spent, how much time from the start of the visit to the end of the visit that people spend there. Page views, the number of views that they actually click through. They might just look, or pages they've actually clicked through. They might, just look at the first page. And so you want to see if they really dig into it. Interaction rate, how many people actually interact with the ad or the application. The actions that are taken during the visit, so do they actually buy something? Do they enter a contest? Do they respond to a poll question? Do they invite friends? Do they post a comment? That kind of thing. Okay, conversation-related measures. Data including the number of unique visitors participating, the number of links related to the conversation that participants reach during the conversation, the duration between the first and last post during the conversation, and the average number of time between posts. So those are, you want to see, if people who are posting or interacting on a website, exactly what's going on. And then finally, visitor demographics. How is it that the target audience navigates around the site, and which demographic profiles have the most engagement, and evaluating the content, whether the content created is a good match with the users or whether it converts many into buyers. And finally, determine how to improve the sell rate and reduce the cost per impression. Okay, so let's talk about Twitter. It's, as I said in this one, we're talking about a variety of different platforms. So the one way is the degree of influence measured by the number of followers, the number of people who follow the followers, and the frequency of updating tweets, and the extent to which one's tweets are referenced or cited. So, how much traction is your tweet getting? Are people listening or not listening, or you're just talking into an empty space, or are people actually responding and sharing it with others? And then there's also Twitter looks at a couple of different types of users. There's celebrities that might have a lot of followers but don't follow very many people, if any. Conversationalists follow about the same number of users as who follow them. So, you're on with your buddies or whatever. And then finally, spammers, which essentially they collect users with the intent to push content to as many people as possible. Okay, so Google Analytics. You want to know where visitors come from. Do they come from referrals? Do they come from search engines, display advertising, pay-per-click, email campaigns, that kind of thing. You want to find out what the customer's actions are after they land on the initial page. do they view other pages? Do they download files? Do they register with the site? What else might they do? You also want to know where they are, where their geographic location is, where do they come from, how long do they stay, and also you can go in and actually profile them. Once you do the geographic location, then you do geographic assignment. Okay, so we talk about media exposure. So media exposure affects measure how many consumers were exposed to the message and their characteristics. Consumer research companies assess how many consumers received the message and construct a profile of those who received it. So companies that do it are Nielsen, Arbitron, MediaMark are just some of the places that do that. And then there's this whole idea of they measure things across platforms as well. So that's big business. It goes back to the whole idea of big data and big analytics. We talked about that in Marketing 1 as well. Okay, so the advancement of print and broadcast media into the electronic communications. They receive one-way communication for messages, and for messages for marketers, and that's something that people have been trying to change. It's in print and broadcast is really trying to adapt with the times, and some of them are doing better than others. But let's just take a look here. So there are strengths and weaknesses to newspapers, magazines, TV, and radio, and they all use segment-based marketing, but it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard because it's going off to a group. So there are pros and cons. You can, that's something for you to think about. Newspapers, geographically are very effective. If it's a specialized newspaper, say like the Wall Street Journal, you might get a different demographic than you would for, let's say, a local newspaper. Magazines and television shows and radio shows can be very specifically targeted. But anyway, if you can, what I would suggest is taking a look at that chart that I added in there. That's straight from the book. It takes a look at a variety of different media and how there's a decline. What is the decline in their advertising? Okay, so that's just a quick look at mobile and traditional media and new media, and how it's impacted, and how, just so that's kind of like the basics, the skeletal of what's going on, and some things to think about in terms of combining the message with the medium to reach the correct target audience. Okay, so that wraps up for Chapter 8, and we'll see you back here with Chapter 9. Thanks, everyone.